is my pleasure to introduce all of you who are listening, watching today to Christine Robinson, and she is a friend. She is also our practice lead in innovation here at Chiefs and has her own thriving practice as well. So we'll get into all of that. But Christine, welcome.
Thank
so
you.
Grateful that you would take some time with us.
Excited to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this conversation is kind of a two-parter with a little ad on the end. And the first part is, I really do want to know what juices you. I've been asking people that for 20 years. So what animates you, what energizes you? You wake up in the morning, you don't have to fuel it, it fuels you.
Yeah.
And it fuels you both in the pursuit of it, but also in the fulfillment of it, which is kind of interesting. And it gives you a reliable energy source that you just know you can always tap into. And that's incredibly different for, one might think, well, that's going to be making a difference for every single human being. No, of course not, right? Our fuels are very, very personal and unique. So I really want to get into that. Yeah. And then the second piece I want to get into with you is, what is that, when distilled, the juice that you bring to the world that people go, oh my goodness, impactful, it was refreshing, it was energizing, and it was completely Christine. Okay? And then the last piece will be, what is your wish for the good people who are viewing or listening to us? Okay?
Yeah.
So let's jump in.
Sounds great.
And this can be, your personal life. It can be your professional life. It's probably going to be a blend of both, but it's up to you. What is it that is completely juicing and energizing for you?
I would probably distill it down to a genuine and deep curiosity for human potential. And I can go back as far as kindergarten and remember being super excited watching the other kids in the class and just observing sort of what made them tick, what made them excited and glad to be in class and relating to others. And
you would be a scary classmate.
You think? I don't think I did it in an
She's
intrusive
analyzing
way.
me again.
I think
that is beautiful. I was amazing.
But I think maybe it's because my brother's 17 years older than me. So I grew up ostensibly like an only child in the house. Okay. And so going to school for me was like this revelation of humanity, just being able to watch people and also have those moments really strike my little nervous system, about what happens when somebody gets shut down or, is excluded or is so overwhelmed by sadness about something that they're not, moving, they're not flexible, they're not having fun.
Let me ask you something. It sounds to me like your stance, even at that age, was others referential versus self-referential.
It was at that point for sure.
Yeah.
As I've reached middle age, I've started to count myself in more.
Okay.
And been much more deliberate about finding myself in groups and inside of that, but also, what is my stance? But I would say at that point, 100%, I was just, in wonder with the world and people and relationships, and just,
Did the curiosity for human potential and that superpower of being able to kind of see what was going on that other people might not have been aware of,
maybe.
Let's just face it, when you needed to, and I'm putting my own language in this, fit in as a teenager and find your place in the group and where am I in the tribe?
Yeah.
Did that innate curiosity turn to more of more self-referential? I think you've already said that, but how did that start to show up at that point in your life?
Yeah, as at a teenager stage. That's interesting. I think we're all trying to find out who we are and figure out what our individual je ne sais quoi might be.
Yeah.
Right? And I would say it was a bit awkward for me because of what I mentioned from a young age.
Yeah.
I was sort of, I don't want to say deeper, but I was sort of more interested in sort of people's inner worlds, including my own, or starting to be. That there were some people who, wanted to go there and some people who didn't. And so, I remember that, especially high school period, being about who is my tribe.
Yes.
And who can I relate to?
Yeah.
Because I was a deep thinker.
Yes.
There's no getting around it.
Right.
And so I was really wanting connection. And sometimes having difficulty, right? Finding people who wanted the same sort of style of connection that I was into.
Yes. Yeah. I can imagine, the group banter with 15 people sitting around a couple tables in the cafeteria is this deep and this wide. And you're sitting there trying to have a conversation with somebody that's this wide, but this deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not everybody has the appetite for that.
Now, appetite is a good word for it.
Yeah, because it's a world of externals at that point, right? It's like makeup and body and you want to be on the internals.
Yeah, and it's not that I didn't, I didn't have sort of a lot of fun and have sort of those more superficial. People who knew me in high school would say she was out at the parties, right?
Okay.
But for me, looking back, I wouldn't have known this at the time, but it was more about the relationship experimentation. That's what I was interested in. That's what I was showing up for.
Give me more on that relationship experimentation.
Well, I would go to a party, in my head, already thinking about who's going to be there and how are they going to relate to each other and what's the dynamic going to look like. I mean,
you're forecasting, you're predicting, all in service of when I'm at that party. Number one, were my predictions right? But number two, can I have the best experience?
Yeah. And I guess that's a little bit like maybe as you say that back to me, a natural social scientist in a way. Like there's an analytical component to that for sure. But really it was about learning how to be in good relationship with people. That's what I was really interested in.
Right.
And so every experiment failed or otherwise, difficult, deeply challenging, or, really fruitful and fun. Every one of those taught me something. So, I mean, that's sort of a sub-theme too, is that I just have always loved learning and the process of learning.
Yeah.
Right. That's just how I tend to do it.
Right. And at this point, it's instrumental in a personal way. As opposed to, this is what I will bring to the world someday.
Yeah.
Which is completely understandable at that age.
Yeah.
I need and I want quality connections, rich connections, and I want meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful. And yet we can start to see the seeds of where this will go when that starts to turn towards the world. Right?
Yeah.
So I hear the relationship, I hear the curiosity for human potential, and I'm hearing rich, deep, quality connections with people. So is that the constellation of the juice for you now?
Yeah, still is.
Yeah,
to this
that
day.
hasn't changed.
Not. I mean, it's morphed and taken different shapes, right? So I can remember even as a teenager being curious about politics and curious about what happens at the country level and what creates identities there, and then zooming in and being just as curious about sitting across from Brady and what makes Brady tick. What's his life story? What has caused him to love certain things? I mean, really, what juices you? Sort of backdrop.
True enough.
And sort of everything in between. So I've worked at team levels, I've worked at organizational levels, being curious about what makes a culture tick and work and be healthy and release human potential.
Right.
And but I'm just as enthused to this day about sort of all the different scopes of that, just as enthused about sitting across from you today, having this conversation and exploring, what makes you and I sort of who we are and makes us get out of bed in the morning. It's all interesting to me.
I can see that. When you say human potential, I think that you and I might assume that who wouldn't be juiced by that? And we know that that's not true.
Right.
That in the tension between a person's current reality and then you spot some potential, or they're spotting it but unable to get there because I've lost my agency, self-limiting beliefs, self-doubt, whatever, just the setbacks and reversals of life. I'm not able to close the gap on what my human potential is.
Yeah.
Some people are called into that space and they know how to chunk down the challenge. They know how to remove barriers. That's what you do.
Yeah.
That's not everybody's jam.
It's not. I know. Yeah.
Why is that so important to you?
Such a good question. There's different ways I could answer that. And I have come to understand with various work that I've done that the, sort of the uncomfortable truth of it is that tends to be our deepest wounds or what we're lacking early on in life.
Okay.
Not always, but that give us sort of clues to our greatest gift. The thing that we need resolved somehow ends up being, our adventure, sometimes for an entire lifetime.
Yeah.
And so that is true for me in the sense that, my parents were refugees and newcomers to Canada from having grown up during the Depression, living through the Second World War in Europe at the time, being very displaced and having difficult early experiences. And it caused them to experience a significant amount of trauma that made their relationship with each other very difficult.
I see.
And so watching the two of them, I can remember as early as 7 years old thinking, they need my help.
Isn't that interesting?
I've got to step in here because somebody has to be the adult in the room.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a sad thing to say out loud.
Yeah.
And it was a sad experience.
Yeah.
However, it sparked something inside me, an ability to watch them in conflict.
Yeah.
And, there's like anything, there's two sides to this coin. It created sort of a hypervigilance, right? That wasn't healthy.
No.
But it also developed this capacity in me to watch for what's sense into what's working in a situation and what's not, what's lighting people up and what's shutting them down. I think I said that earlier, right? And what's doing harm. And, so I have a story from early childhood of, everyone's experienced some version of this where I think it was 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah.
And we're hanging out in a group of girls and the mean girls sort of showed up.
Oh, okay.
And cut out Tiffany was her name. I still can see her face to this day. I didn't know Tiffany well, but they did as soon as recess starts, we're going to run off and leave Tiffany by herself.
Yep.
And they were encouraging me to sort of join them. And I was immediately sort of heartbroken looking at her face, going, no. And I could cry even still, just thinking about it. Mm-hmm. But that is not okay. That's going to leave a wound in Tiffany that may not heal. I'm staying with her.
Yeah.
And it did cause me to be excluded by the more popular girls for a period of time. Yep. Right. But I feel like that is a little bit of an early wiring because unfortunately, mostly the difficult part of the relationship was directed, in my case, mostly at mom. Right. Mm-hmm. And, so that little bit of it's an internal wiring for smelling smoke, for knowing when something's not quite right, when somebody in the room doesn't feel safe, that I've learned to harness. That's how I would say it.
Totally. And so it feels like the curiosity for human potential has within it seeing and experiencing deep pain between your parents, but also with your friends. And so there's some sort of justice thing in here.
For sure there is.
Social exclusion, exploitation, manipulation, that which is just cruelty. there's something inside of you that rises up and uses your superpowers of being able to figure out what's going on in the relationship to set that right.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, it is. It is. That's a huge part. And I have described it that way in other conversations where there's this sort of emerging sense of, let's call it a social justice warrior that sort of lives inside me. That's not in the sort of pat way, but in terms of it's interrupting somebody's sense of self. It's interrupting their ability to thrive in the world. And that is sort of it's breaking a golden rule in my soul,
Totally.
that sometimes it's not mine. I've had to learn that lesson too. Sometimes it's not mine to get directly involved. But there's often a way to make a difference. Just even with a word of kindness or whatever. But when you're a facilitator, you have an active role in monitoring that and making sure.
People with this bent and this urge this is not you, and I know this to be true, but they can slip into saviorism.
Totally.
They can slip into helicoptering, over-nurturing.
Yep. I've had my moments.
Right? So can you talk to us about managing that tension?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the evidence is in our relationships. And so it is true for me that when I was noticing that I wasn't necessarily getting the results that I wanted in relationships. And this is an ongoing process. It's not like I figured it out. No. I've had very recent experiences where I've got it wrong.
Sure.
However, when you're constantly experimenting like that, then I think you just look at, is this relationship looking, is it working? Is it looking right? Is it feeling right?
Can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, please.
Is there a recent example that you could point to that would not be damning, or for you or another person, just so that our audience could really go, I know exactly how she's managing this tension?
Yeah. It lives inside of my parenting for sure.
Okay.
Probably in a really visceral way. So one of my sons is what we would term a high autonomy kind of person.
Yep. I know high autonomy.
And simply put, that's just, he likes to do things his own way.
Sure.
Doesn't like to be told. And so my challenge as a parent is knowing when to sort of lean in and try to provide structure and when to sort of get out of the way.
Yeah.
And I think because he's got a sensitive soul and he's gone through troubled periods in his life. I have allowed probably some of my early experiences to leak in and to be afraid for him. Right. And it's that fear when I let it take over my decision-making process around how I can be the best mom to him.
Yeah.
When fear takes hold, I can tend to control.
Yeah.
And so I pay close attention to when fear is ruling my decision-making as much as I can.
Yeah.
And know that that's my anxiety to take care of. And he's 20 now, right? Yeah. So, he really needs to start living an independent life, and he's on his way.
Yeah,
he's not living with us anymore. So it'll be decisions around, not going to sleep at night and, spending too much time partying and things like that, where I'm learning to let go. It's probably that in most situations. I haven't thought about making the connection as much between that and other spaces, but letting go of any illusion that I have control over somebody else's outcome.
That's terrifying to let go.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So work in progress, but that's my process is
Thank you.
to notice when I feel fear and to try to manage the anxiety so that I can make a clearer decision about where something is mine to be involved with or not.
There just seems to me there's two types of letting go. The parent who doesn't necessarily have the curiosity about human potential and how the interrelationship, and kind of the dark, solid line between this behavior and the implication. And it's kind of like, well, I just need to get this out of my head and let the kid go. But there's the other person who feels deeply and understands all those interdependencies and where things could go.
Yeah.
That's a different kind of letting go.
Yeah. Probably. And I think any kid of somebody who does what we do would say that it's a more complex process.
Yeah. My kids would probably say that. Yeah. Yeah. So I have a sense about what juices you, and I think we've gotten into a little bit about your juice for the world, but I'd like to just kind of unpack that a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So when people experience you at your full potential, state of flow, in the zone, you're going, wow, something just happened here. What are they experiencing?
Yeah. So I'll go by what people have told me, or the feedback that I've received. And, I can sort of get inside of the experience, but you put your finger on it, is I'm usually so focused there that I'm not tracking my internal experience. Again, I'm doing it more. But anyway, what people will tell me is that they feel really seen, that I've held space for them to be more authentically who they are, to be honest with themselves and with me, to find a breakthrough on an issue that has been a stumbling block or where they've been stuck. And I think it's because I'm so focused on creating safety for people, and because of my genuine curiosity.
Right.
I think it's probably those two things. It's like, I really am genuinely curious, and I think do a reasonable job of holding a non-judgmental perspective. It's just, even if it's sort of the underbelly of something, I have lots of capacity for that. And again, I think maybe in childhood that developed is I can see the human behind almost any mistake.
Right.
Or, it doesn't fuss me.
Yes.
And so I think people feel that.
So one of the things that I love about coactive coaching, this is not a plug, but to see a person as innately creative and resourceful.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like the space that you are holding and the space that you are creating, a huge amount of psychological safety, but it feels like, and the curiosity that you have, that's an amazing space for somebody to explore things that they can't necessarily explore when there's that harsh editorial voice saying, who are you to even be thinking about this? Yeah. You're somehow allowing that voice to be kind of dissolved. In whether
I tend to confront it.
Okay.
Yeah, when I hear it show up.
Yes, so there's a confrontation piece as well as the safety and curiosity. Talk to me about the belief that you have. It's one thing to see someone's potential and be curious about it. And I think it's another thing to actually believe that they can step into that.
Yeah.
And I know that there have been people in my life when they really believed in me, when I couldn't for myself.
Yeah.
It was instrumental.
Yeah.
Is that something you bring as well when you're is that part of your juice for the world or not?
100%.
Yeah.
So I think I've described it to people in the past, and this might sound weird, going back again into childhood. It's like I could almost see sort of a thought bubble or an image above people's heads as I was walking around, that it's like, it's the image of sort of who they really are, fully expressed, their full potential.
Yes.
I know that sounds kind of
it sounds gorgeous.
kind of odd.
It sounds just gorgeous.
But
I wish
yes.
every manager could do that with their
Yeah.
employees before they have a career conversation with them.
Yeah, well, and it's a double-edged sword.
Sure.
Because I think people who have reported to me in the past have maybe not in the moment, but later told me, you helped me access more potential than I could see in myself. That's the good side, but it also means that I'm always influencing.
Yeah.
Because I have a really strong belief that everyone has, something that's hiding, a gem that's hiding inside. And so it's exciting to engage with people, but I've learned to be, to find my permission with it. Because it's not about me. It has to be about what the other person wants to discover, right?
Yeah. It's the observation effect, right? That when something is observed, it changes. And when it's observed with the view of potential and belief, then that influence comes to bear upon them.
Yeah.
And it may or may not be invited. Or wanted.
Yeah.
And so if I'm a son of yours who wants a lot of autonomy,
yeah, exactly.
That being seen and observed, and like, I see the thought bubble of all your potential. It's like, go away, Mom.
Go away.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful picture, and the juice that, if I can imagine, if I was one of your coaching clients, or if in a facilitation that you're doing, that's going to have an effect on me. That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I want you to have a chance to just speak candidly and unfiltered to our audience, and to answer the questions. My wish is that every person listening to this, what is your wish for the people that are watching or listening?
Well, if I had sort of a magic wand, it would be, I wish you could see yourself in my eyes. Because of that, that image that I have of, the best version of everyone. And so it would be, I wish that everyone could be just a little bit more brave to explore kind of what you're here to do and be more fully yourself.
Can we step into something that is completely, well, everything's been unscripted so far, other than I gave you a construct of how, and you can completely pass on this if you wish to.
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
What is the thought bubble that you see over my head?
Oh my goodness.
What is the potential that I might not see, that you, with that capability and unique talent, even as a kindergartner, you saw the thought bubbles that hasn't gone away. So I know this is incredibly self-serving for me.
No, but it's a hard one, Brady, because I feel like you do live it. I feel like you have spent your life, on your growth edge, if you will.
Yeah.
Exploring yourself with great integrity while doing the work that you do in the world. So I actually think you're a shining example to me of somebody who, we talked about it before the camera started rolling. Actually, the way you wrote your book is that way of living, where you are constantly challenging yourself to be the best version of yourself that you can be, and that's expressed in the love that you show for people, the way you see them, and the way you light up an audience by bringing out the best in them. So. The thought bubble is not actually that strong. I'm looking at realized potential, I think.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's the beautiful, beautiful thing that there isn't unrealized potential. Not that there isn't more for me, but that there's not this wasted piece that I haven't stepped into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it's that. You're putting your finger on something.
Yeah.
It's having the peace of mind to really feel that in your bones as you consider your legacy.
That's really interesting. Almost the peace to feel it, to experience it in my bones.
that you've done immense work, and you've got a really powerful legacy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has gone exactly where it needs to go, which is always about me. Christine Robinson, thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for our entire conversation, and for that little gift that you gave me at the very end. It was very true to me. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. It was fun.
Good.
Yeah.